Okay, I want to talk about two data analyst certificates on Coursera. There's an IBM one. It's called IBM Professional Data Analytics Certificate or something along the lines of that. And then there's a Google Data Analytics. So, so let me back up with why I took these certificates. The IBM one, I started on that first. I did this in college, my senior year, because I was trying to pivot from political science to data science, and it got me into my first job. So, yeah, I mainly did the IBM more just to see, will I like this? So it was kind of like a introduction to what the industry might look like. Obviously, data science looks a little different for each company and company size and mission. So doing the IBM, I realized it solidified my decision. I really like data science. It makes sense in my mind. So it was an overlap of interests and skills. And so the IBM course was a really good introduction for me. So I did that last year. I completed this in March 2021, so around COVID time. Yeah, COVID kind of screwed up my life, so I chose to do the IBM certificate. Then I did the Google certificate I started Labor Day weekend this year, completed it in September 2022. So yeah, the reason I started Google Analytics was because I just wanted to see how the two certificates differed. So now I have about like 7 or 8 comparisons. So if I look down, that's because I have the notes here. So I'm gonna go over the list of the differences. So the course count for both IBM and Google are 8 courses. And in each course, you can expect like 4 or 5 weeks amounts of content. Typically, it's like reading and videos and quizzes. So it follows that general format. And then the estimated completion time for the IBM is 11 months if you put in 3 hours per week dedication. And for Google, it's shorter at 6 months, but 10 hours per week. It is $39 per month for both programs. So once you do the math, the IBM works out to be more, because if you have to pay $39 per month for 11 months, that's more than $39 for 6 months. So language and tools used in these courses. The IBM one used Python, and Python was done in Jupyter Notebook, so a lot of pandas, and Excel. And then in Google, they use R and they use SQL, which I believe IBM used SQL, but not to the extent that Google did. And then R was done in BigQuery instead of Excel. They had Excel as an option, but all the instructions were very much Google Sheets, which makes sense. It's within their ecosystem, so they're going to push their ecosystem and their tools. It was very integrated. So you've got Google BigQuery, you've got Google Sheets. So yeah, it just worked out. And then for visualization tools, IBM used their IBM Cognos, which is kind of like a cloud service. And speaking of that, they also use IBM DB2 as their database, whereas Google used BigQuery as their database. And then for Google, they use Tableau as their visualization tool, which is one plus sign for Google, because from what I've heard and my personal experience, Tableau is much more commonly used tool than IBM Cognos. I'm sure there are companies out there that do use IBM Cognos, but Tableau is almost like a universal. Tableau, Looker, Power BI, things like that. You hear those tools, visualization tools, being used more frequently. So in this case, Google is a little more in touch with the industry. So if they're advertising, we will get you skills that are marketable or industry friendly, or however they might phrase it. Tableau is probably the better choice. For assessment, I think I'll provide my opinions later. For now, I'll just list out the assessment types. On the IBM, they have hands-on projects, and so does Google. However, the IBM hands-on projects, you don't simply just follow them on the instructions. You also have to submit, like you have to turn in your Jupyter notebook. You have to turn in your visualization, and I downloaded my photos and then put them in like a PDF and submitted that way. They have quizzes and they have peer review work. What I mean by that is you submit something and then you have to grade your peers. So it's not just get through the thing just to get through the thing. You're also asked to look at other people's work, which I think is really valuable, because now you can see how there are different approaches. You can also give someone your opinion on why. There's a rubric, but with the rubric, once you grade them, you can justify why they gave you the score that they gave you, and vice versa. So I really like that aspect. Google, however, you do the hands-on project, and there might be one question, like quiz question, related to the hands-on project. Honestly, if you just make your best guess, and there are 4 options, you have 4 tries to figure out what the right answer is, and the question never changes. So that's kind of like a red flag, because someone could very well just play the guessing game and deduce each time that they get wrong, and they can do that in 4 tries and get it right. So if someone does that, then they lose out on the value of learning, obviously. But there's no accountability aspect. There's no peer review. I mean, yes, there's a forum where you can ask questions and talk back and forth. But yeah, I think Google Analytics, they didn't take their assessments very, very seriously. They also have quizzes, and the quizzes are automated. So what I'm guessing is on the back end, they have for each question, and each question might have a special identifier, and then with each identifier there's a special answer, and it's always limited. Like they're not open-ended typically. They're not bullet points, they're multiple choice. So each answer probably has a code, and then associates this question with this unique ID must match this unique ID of this answer. If it is matching, then mark as correct. So it was very much automated. There was no personal feedback, no grading. So sure, if you got it wrong the first time, especially like in the non-practice quizzes, but like the final quizzes, like the very last quiz of that course or unit, they would shuffle the questions around or say the wording a little different. But again, someone could easily cheat that system. So yeah, it felt very robotic and automated, and just like very minimal accountability. So that was my biggest disappointment for the Google Analytics. The Capstone, going right along with the assessment. Capstone is something that you complete at the very end of your certificate as a way to show all the skills you've learned along the way, and now you get to use it. And so with the IBM, the Capstone was extensive. There were multiple steps. You had to submit. It's been a while, but I think you submit different parts of your project. There's like a timeline, and you submit like part 1, part 2 or something. And then at the very end, you submit your work with once you've processed the data, cleaned the data, all that. And you have to present your data by using the visualizations you use in the EDA, or exploratory data analysis. And then you have to present, like you have to film yourself presenting a PowerPoint essentially. But in this case, it was you had your IBM Cognos visualization, and you had to walk through each visualization and make your conclusions on your visualizations. So it was a very well-rounded and extensive capstone. And again, you get that feedback from your peers. As for Google though, one of the good things about it is that they had multiple tracks. What I mean by tracks is like there might be like 3 different kinds of prompts. Prompt 1, I think, was the bicycle. Prompt 2 was something else. Prompt 3, choose whatever you want. And then they just had like a little template to fill out, like, oh, when you're going through this project, make sure you consider this and this and this. But again, it's also assessing, using the skills you've learned, which is R, BigQuery, Sheets, Google Sheets, and Tableau. Can you create a presentation out of that? So I chose the track 3, which was customize your own. So mine was using R to do the data extraction, processing, cleaning, and so on. And also my visualizations came from R. And then I put all of that into not a markdown file. I put all of my findings into like a PDF. So anyways, what was interesting is at the very end, there was a quiz that said, it was a yes or no question. It said, did you complete the capstone? That was all the accountability that they had, was just you hoping you are being honest. So I said yes. And then there was another one, but it was an optional prompt. It said, share your work to the forum. So I dropped the link from my GitHub, because that's where I uploaded my work, was GitHub. But there was no guarantee that someone will reply to your work or that you have to engage with someone. So that was very disappointing, because I spent all of my Sunday working on that capstone project only for the quiz to ask me, did you finish it, yes or no? And then in parentheses, it said your answer, something along the lines of, your answer will not affect your certificate completion. So how I interpreted it was, whether you did the project or not, we're not going to check, because we're just here to collect the $39, and we could just say we had another person go through the course. That's how I interpreted it. Was I don't see you as a student, I just see you as another customer, and I don't really care whether you actually understood the materials or not. It's a passive income for me. And by me, or I'm speaking as Google, because yeah, so that was that. Let me say some pros of both. Pros of IBM is accountability, with the way they had peer review work, where their assessments were more taken seriously. They were very organized. And so was Google. Google was organized too. Google is modern in the way they, at least the GUI of it all. The UI designs were very nice. And it was all within Google ecosystem, which was an advantage to them. But that made the student experience very seamless using the Google applications, because I'm sure I don't know what percentage of the population uses Gmail, but almost everyone uses Google as a browser. So, it's not too foreign of a platform for students, whereas I could think of someone trying to learn Jupyter Notebook for the first time. Figuring out how to navigate it is one thing. Figuring out how to learn a new language is another. So Google has an advantage in that sense, in that it's all within their Google ecosystem. And then it was well crafted. What I mean by well crafted is for each, it was like a cutesy theme throughout, in terms of color scheme and the people they selected for these instructional videos. They had one main character or human dedicated per each course, and that person would go through the whole course with you. And I think they did a good job of trying to think of representation, which I think is really good, because we need that kind of a representation in data science. So yeah, that was their plus. Now that I've compared the major differences, I want to go on a mini rant and give you a caution as well. The reason I thought of this was in a conference, I was talking to just my audience because in my intro, it said that I was a data analyst and she was interested in data science. So she was telling me, hey, I'm going through the Google Analytics. I would really like to be a data analyst one day. So I thought that's awesome. Like, it's a great place to start. But at that time, I had not taken the Google Analytics certificate. I had only taken the IBM one. So I told her my experience with it and how I landed my first job with it. But now I wish I had more time to add a lot of asterisks or cautions, because IBM alone did not get me my job. It was a starting point. It was supplemental to my resume, but did not cause me to get the job. And that's something I wish I had told her at the moment. Because what these two certificates do well is they sell an opportunity. And that can borderline scamming. If you sell an opportunity rather than the reality, then you're just sitting there collecting money on emotions of people who want to break into tech. So they understand, okay, there's a demand for people wanting to make it into the tech industry because COVID and the inflation, so people want to, make their money. Well, they're using this opportunity to say, hey, if you take my certificate, you can be industry ready. That's false. You could not be ready. These skills alone are not industry ready. They're like scratching the surface. And yeah, so just to say that my course, my 6-month or 1-year course can land you a job is a dangerous thing to sell. And even more so if you say, not that they're saying directly like, oh, if you do the 6 months course with Google that you could get a job at Google. No. But what I have been hearing is people on social media saying, oh, you want to break into tech? Well, do Google Analytics and make it into FANG. No. Where are the statistics backing this? I would like to see the amount of participants, and then of that population, what percent actually graduates, and what percent graduates on time, the 6-month estimated time. And then I want to look at the subpopulation of those who graduated on time, meaning 6 months or less, got a job. Now, because of Google Analytics, then we need to cut that population even smaller and exclude people like me who are already in the data analytics world or already in the tech world. So again, that population shrinks dramatically. Now, in that smaller population, I want to know how many people made it to Google, and I'm sure that's like 1-2%, right? Because whatever they instructed you is not enough, especially if you think about Google. The type of technical interview, whatever you learn on this certificate will be a joke, because sure, they might use R, but when they ask questions, their questions are more Java, Python. You have to know data structures and algorithms. You have to have a strong understanding of like things, more advanced math like linear algebra and calculus and statistics for more of the machine learning. So yeah, they're selling a false opportunity while they're sitting there collecting your money. And the other thing is, if let's say you find this to be not as exciting, you lose motivation because that certificate can't come quick enough, and then you fall out of the routine of doing it, you come back and you forgot everything you learned in the first couple weeks, but you don't want to go back. Either way, whatever the reason might be, you have surpassed the estimated time period. That doesn't matter to them. They're still collecting your $39 unless you cancel on your own. So it's just really unfortunate because they're targeting the people who want to break into tech by selling this false promise that this one little piece of paper will give you the opportunity, when that's not the case. There's so much more that you need to do to get a job. Like I said, for me, the IBM was a supporting thing on my resume, but was not the thing that made me get the job. Same thing for Google Analytics. I am not applying to Google because this thing is not sufficient to get a job at Google. So some of the ways that they were kind of deceiving were they quote the rise of data in tech industry, how that's blown up. That part is not false. That is not false. But the way they used it to sell you this false promise is problematic. And then them saying the median entry level is $70-some thousand dollar salary baseline. That's a way to entice people that aren't making anything. So again, that's not quite fair either, because that really depends. What state are you in? What size company are you in? So yeah, and then there was one, I don't know if it was IBM or Google, it said, 75% of our participants in our survey said that they got a career improvement. That might be gotten a pay, gotten a better job, or whatever way has elevated them, whether it's by money or position or job hopping. Well, I would like some transparency numbers on that. Let's say, looking at all the participants, what amount of those participants took the survey? Now, shrinking it down to just people who took the survey. Already that's biased because you're excluding all the people who did not take the survey. And then you say, okay, the people who did take the survey, how many of them were already in a job placement? How many of them are just doing this for fun? Like, Google for me wasn't to get a job. Google Analytics was more for fun and curiosity. So I find that problematic that they have no transparent numbers. They're just saying 75%. 75% of what? And then, like for me, one of the questions was, did you get paid less or more than when you started? Well, I started on one Sunday and finished the following Sunday. There was no time to negotiate my price, my salary. So no, my price did not change. Did you get a new job? Did you switch industries? No, I was still with my company. So yeah, was my number counted in that 75%? So things like that. Like I find their marketing strategies to be very predatory on young people, predatory on people who are wanting to just get the easy out. And what I mean by getting the easy way out is just, maybe this one certificate will guarantee so much more. If you truly thought this one certificate could get you a job, especially Google, wouldn't everyone be at Google? So it's thinking logically about these things. And yeah, anyway, so that's my rant. Some tips I have, because if we have a problem, we should offer some solutions. Some tips I have are that as you're going through this certificate, maybe even before you start the certificate, evaluate why you want to start this certificate and do a cost-benefit analysis and see if it's really worth your time, worth your money. Then from there, count backward in time. So for me, for example, IBM was something that I used to try to get into a job. I had no exposure to data science, so I thought, let me try it with IBM. It's pretty reputable. I hadn't known Google Analytics was a thing yet. So I thought, okay, that's straightforward. Let me give it a try. So for me, it was to get a job. And I started this my senior year in college. So I knew I had coursework for college. I had jobs on campus, and I also needed to do this. And I had picked up a minor. So like I had to think, how much of the time am I willing to give to this certificate that is not attached to my school? And will I be able to complete it? So from there, I had to count backwards in time. Okay, there are 8 courses. How many weeks per course? Oh, okay, I need to start fast tracking this thing because I don't want to be paying a lot of money. And so, so I was able to shrink this program. I started December. Yeah, I started around Christmas break and finish in March. My biggest motivator was I wanted to get a job and I wanted to do this as cheaply as possible. So by doing that, I mapped my own timeline out and got through it. And then the other thing is that you have to recognize that these certificates are merely starting places. So even I knew that IBM wasn't going to secure me a job. If it was, then why would I need any form of like college degree, right? So I knew I had to do extra things. So I had to build my portfolio, and I had to network, and I had to, so through networking, I would talk to people and ask them what their experiences were like. And then I asked for a mentor. So I had, through a mutual connection, I found an IT director, and he was able to help me out, and I gave him my resume to review. I told him about the certificate, and he helped me figure out how to use the certificate to support my resume, which was very much like liberal arts heavy. And then, so certificates are good starting points, but they're not the only things that'll secure you a job. Have some self-direction. Figure out your why before you start. Once you know your why, figure out your what, which is what is my timeline, what is my commitment capacity, what are prerequisites do I need before this. Once you figure out your what and the why, your why and then your what, everything else kind of just follows. So the when comes where, oh, well, I know that I want to do this in less than 11 months. Then when I do this, I need to put in more hours per week to fast track this thing. And then start portfolio building, which they encourage, but they don't really tell you about how to do that. So talk to someone that's in the industry and ask how they build their portfolio. I personally use GitHub, and I typically group all my projects under one folder, and then within it I organize this so that it shows my raw work, and then I also typically have like a conclusion where I take all my pieces of work and put them into like a PDF or like a PowerPoint. That way if someone wants to look at it at a high level, they can see just the presentation view, and then if they want to dig in deeper, I have raw data ready for them. I have my Jupyter notebook for them, whatever it might be. So yeah, those are the 3 tips I want to give. But yeah, if you're wanting to break into tech, I think that's awesome, but just don't be discouraged or misled by these little campaigns. So yeah, you got this. Hopefully this comparison was able to help you decide which one sounded more appetizing to you and useful for your needs. So yeah, good luck.